Let's wait for people. Also take a screenshot very quickly. Look like you are being interviewed. Got it. All right. Yeah. So, can you see people joining?
Yep.
Wow, that's quick. Everyone was around the corner, I guess. Hey, hello, people. Two participants raised hands. They are like, yes, we can hear you. Thank you for letting us know. Sharayu test. All right. Well, it's so fun, right? I mean, at least in a physical setting, I would not have been able to just go to their person and just put their hands down. But if I just go right now, I can lower their hand. Digital world is so cool. It allows you to be rude with wow, okay. Some people are no, I will raise my hand again. They have raised their hands again. That's well, cool. Thanks. More people are raising their hands. This is not a protest. All right. Hey, thank you so much for joining in very quickly as well. So many people have joined. You can write in chat if you were waiting in the waiting room, or what was your experience, or were you just waiting for the host to just kick off the meeting or webinar? Otherwise, I'm sure you must have already noticed our three lovely backgrounds. If anyone guesses where this is from, I'll be so happy. Oh, wow. Someone is complaining that we start. Oh, wow. Someone guessed it right. Also, someone is complaining you started at 4:01. No, we did not start at 4:01. We started at 4. And then, like, in that minute, basically, it switched over to 1. All right. Hey, hello, everyone. So I guess a lot of people have already joined. And what time is it right now? We're just, I already told them that we'll do a little bit of banter so that we can wait for 5 minutes. And this is what's going on right now. And that's why, we have this situation. So we'll just wait for other folks to join in for the next 2 minutes in case someone is running late and they're not able to reach the office. So
very subtle. It was very.
Thanks. At least someone got it. I have an audience. Otherwise, sometimes it's just like webinar is talking to people in the blank and you get nothing out of it. Nothing. Yeah. So I'm glad. Cool. So people are just, hey, by the way, if you're using chat, you can select, instead of all panelists, you can broadcast it to everyone as well. So feel free to chat amongst yourselves. It will be highly appreciated. Obviously keep to some restrictions and don't breach any, what do you call them?
Code of conducts.
Code of conducts. Thank you so much, Piyush. Just be kind to everyone. Also, we already have like 50 people now. And I'm already lying. 3 less than 50, but we'll take it. 48. See, people are still coming in. And how's everyone feeling today? If you have any replies, feel free to reply in the chat, because no audio for you guys. Otherwise, how are you both doing? You're feeling good about this webinar? Piyush is like, I'm too chill. I will just do this webinar right after my client call. How about you, Akash?
Feeling good.
Feeling good. All right. Thanks. That was a very descriptive answer. Appreciated.
Yeah.
But still gives me good enough information. There are a lot of people who are saying they are doing good, feeling good. So good to know. All right. We've hit our 50 people mark. And in case my dad walks from behind, please don't get alarmed because it has happened in a practice session in the morning. So hopefully this time around he won't be topless. So yeah, and that's why this virtual background exists. Wow, more people raised hands. They're like, yes. Okay, so I think we're good to start. It is 4:05, and I'll very quickly go through my notes of what I need to say now. So, hey, welcome everyone. The banter is over. And thank you so much for joining the webinar. Today, we're going to learn about DigitalOcean's managed Kubernetes service and how to launch a Drupal application on it. So today we have two presenters here, awesome people in the same office. Piyush, he's a cloud enthusiast with 5+ years of experience. He has, he has developed a lot of cloud. He has a lot of experience developing cloud platforms and helping customers migrate their legacy applications to cloud. Yeah, he's also a public speaker. As you can see, he has a pro mic, but he does a lot of his public speaking outside as well, and serves the developer community as part of Kubernetes contributor experience group. And he's currently working with DigitalOcean as a senior developer advocate. So if you have clap symbol on your side, do that while I, introduce Akash now. So Akash has worked on more than 20 highly scalable and fault-tolerant projects in this 4+ years of experience. He's a certified Kubernetes administrator who likes to tinker with Kubernetes, GitLab, Docker, Service Mesh, Prometheus, and a lot of other tools which we did not write because they were not buzzwords in his spare time. When not at his desk, you will find him working at an NGO or in his garden, obsessing over new gadgets. Some people will have had realized that I've read this verbatim from their descriptions, but yeah, that's what I did because, yeah, lazy. Thank you. If you're clapping in your side, just let us know in the chat as well. All right. So yeah, a little bit of housekeeping announcements as well. Like if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A section. We'll answer them at the end. If it is something really pressing, then let us know that this has to be solved right now. But I don't think anything comes up like that. At the end of the webinar, you'll receive a survey as well. But right now, we also, before beginning, I think we have a few questions for the crowd. So I'll just share that with you guys and girls. So I'll just launch that poll. And feel free to answer these questions. I'll keep these open for like 10 more seconds now. They're fairly easy to answer. Wow, people are pouring into chat. Oh, they did the clap wala thing. They did the clap thing in the chat. So that's a good thing. Cool.
Yep.
All right. Wow. So 50% of you have already voted. And yeah, now it's 60%. Wow, it's so cool to see the stats move. I'll also share the stats with everyone. So that it's cool. Oh, nice. About 40 people have already voted. If you've not, please vote so that we can close it. If you are just keeping the video on and not around, then it's fine. All right, I'll take the answer. So I'll just end the polling now. It seems everyone has answered. As I was closing it, it turned, a few more people answered. So these are the results. So it seems that a lot of you have heard about Kubernetes, but have not, used it. Several of you have not used DigitalOcean as well, but a significant number has used it. A lot of you are Drupal folks, so not a big surprise there. And a lot of you have used GitLab CI/CD as well, so that's a great thing, I think. This is the poll. I'll hand over the mic, our metaphorical non-physical virtual mic to Piyush. So over to you, Piyush.
Yeah, thank you. And let me just share my screen. I hope you all can see my screen now.
Hey, yes, we can.
Perfect. Thank you, Parth. Thank you for that gentle introduction. And not to override on all of that, this slide is just more of a contact information. So, hi everyone. I'm Piyush Gupta, and I work as a senior developer advocate at DigitalOcean. And if you would want to reach out to me, you can find me on Kubernetes Slack. My handle there is Pensu91. You can also find me on Twitter with the same handle. Or if you are the kind of person who would rather write down an email, please feel free to shoot one at pgupta@digitalocean.com. Right. So that's the agenda for today. And basically, this webinar is going to be in two parts kind of a thing. So I will talk to you about the components that we would be using for the demo, right? I will be talking to you about Kubernetes and then DigitalOcean Kubernetes service, and then, GitLab and Drupal, right? And then Akash would take over and he will basically talk about how you can mix them and create a Drupal deployment workflow using GitLab and DigitalOcean Kubernetes, and he will also do a demo on that, right? So let's get started, right? So the first thing first, let's talk about Kubernetes, right? And I guess as the poll result showed, right, a lot of you do know about Kubernetes. I'm sure most of you would be using it, or at least exploring it. And let's talk a bit about what makes Kubernetes so widely adopted, right? The way it's growing, Kubernetes is rapidly becoming the de facto standard for your application development and deployment, right? And it does provide a lot of value adds to your organizations, to your teams, right? To talk about a few, Kubernetes is resource efficient, right? So Kubernetes basically runs something known as pods, and pods are nothing, just a group of containers. So containers are very small in size, right? They boot up pretty fast, and they're like few hundred MBs or so. So you save a lot on resources. Contrast this to the virtualization world, where you have to boot up virtual machines, probably few GBs in size, and they have to boot up kernel, and then they have to boot up operating system, right? It takes a lot of time, and containers, can literally do that in seconds, right? So it becomes pretty resource efficient, and that also increases productivity, right? You want to test something out soon, right? You have got a new feature coming in, or you have got a new piece of code coming in, right? And you would want to quickly test it and check, if there are any bugs or if there are any issues with that. Kubernetes helps you do that, right? Pretty fast, and that helps you catch bugs faster. It helps you, improve your product development life cycle as well. Kubernetes has built-in concept for high availability, right? And when you are, when you are growing, right? When your product is growing, when your user base is growing, one of the things that you don't want is for them to face any downtime, right? And Kubernetes high availability concept help you there, right? You can create multiple copies of your application, and you can use an abstraction layer on top of that. That's called a service. And you can make sure that whenever there is a request coming to your application, it always gets routed to the copy that is up, right? In infrastructure world, things happen, right? Your application node might go down itself, right? Your hardware might have some issues. And in that case, rather than manually routing the request to an available copy, Kubernetes does it automatically out of the box, right? And then you have got scalabilities. You can just run one simple command, kubectl, scale deploy, right? And you can just set the number of replicas. I need 10 copies of my application, and Kubernetes will make sure that you have at least 10 copies of your application running. And it's not just about scaling up. You might want to scale down as well when there is not much load, right? And you can do that as well. You can just set up a lower number of replicas, and Kubernetes will do it for you. And one of my favorite part of Kubernetes capabilities is the declarative API, right? You don't have to be an expert programmer to interact with the Kubernetes cluster. You can just write down a simple YAML or a JSON file, and you can just say that this is my application. This is the container image I want to use. This is the number of copies I need, and these ports needs to be open. And now the onus is on Kubernetes to make sure that all of this happens, right? And it does it automatically, right? So you can basically focus on what you want to focus on. That's the coding or solving a problem, right? Let Kubernetes take care of the infrastructure part, right? And that's not all, right? There are a lot of other things that Kubernetes provides. It is highly extensible, right? You can virtually extend any of the component in Kubernetes and make it work with your legacy resources as well, right? I'll talk a bit about Kubernetes architecture, right? So if you look at the diagram, you have got so like any other distributed system, Kubernetes works on master worker architecture, right? You have got control plane, right? So that's where the master components run. And these are basically your scheduler that takes care of scheduling your workloads onto the worker nodes. You have got API server, and API server is the core component of a Kubernetes cluster. All the other components talk to the Kubernetes API server to make sure that whatever the task they are supposed to do. And then there is controller manager, and controller manager basically makes sure that the state of the cluster is maintained, right? Whatever you want that cluster to have, that particular cluster has all of that at any point of time, right? And then you have got the etcd database. And etcd is a place where all the state of the cluster is stored, right? So due to any reason, if your cluster goes down, right, or if your hardware goes down, or infrastructure went down or anything like that, if you have the backup of etcd database, you can basically recreate the whole cluster, right? So this is a very important component, and it's always a best practice to take backup of etcd database. If you are planning to run Kubernetes in production, just make sure you have a capability where you can back up etcd database to a secure location, right, at a regular interval. That would help you, and that would save a lot of time in the long run, right? And then you have got worker planes, and kubelet is the main agent there. Kubelet is basically a bridge of a sort between the control plane and the worker plane. It takes instruction from the control plane about what to run, where to run, right? What are all the things that that the node should be doing, and it also sends data from the worker plane to the control plane, right? About how much is the CPU load, how much are the memory uses, right? Among other things, right? And then you have got pods. Pods are basically a logical unit that's basically a group of containers, right? And a pod can have only one container, it can have more than one container depending on what the configuration is, right? And then pods use services to talk to each other, right? That's basically an abstraction layer that you create on top of pods, right? And users can talk to the cluster either via API client, right? You want to use an Go API client or a Python client, right? Or you can talk to it via kubectl as well, or you can direct make API calls as well, right? Curl based API calls would work as well, depending on whatever your preference is, right? Moving on, right? So let's talk about DigitalOcean Kubernetes service, right? So Kubernetes is pretty efficient, as we just discussed. And if you mix that efficiency of Kubernetes with cost saving of DigitalOcean, right? DigitalOcean helps you save almost 53% on compute and 59% on block storage, right? And if you are just wondering where are these figures coming from, you can have a look at this white paper. That's do.co/TCO-WP, right? And you would and you can get basically details on where I'm getting these figures from. And then if you mix those things, you basically get DigitalOcean Kubernetes service, right? And it helps you set up a Kubernetes cluster in minutes, right? Right. Talking a bit more about DigitalOcean Kubernetes service, right? Sorry. So what are all the features, right, that comes with the DOKS cluster, right? One of the things is you get is a free control plane, right? And if you remember the diagram that we were looking at, Kubernetes has a lot of components, right, in these two planes, right? And if you want to set it up yourself, uh, it's going to be a certain amount of work, and also a lot of management to make sure that all of these components are up and running and they are talking to each other, right? And if you don't want to make that effort, it's better to go with a managed service, right? And with this managed service, one of the biggest benefit is you don't have to pay for the control plane, right? It is completely managed by DigitalOcean, and you only pay for the worker nodes, right? You only pay for the resources that you're using, right? You can create multiple node pools, right? Your application would have multiple components, and not all of them would need equal amount of resources, right? So you don't have to, you don't have to use one rule fit all kind of a thing. You can just create multiple node pools with different configurations and make sure your components only run on those particular nodes, right? That way you can save resources for a replication, right? You got an auto scaling option as well. So whenever the load increases of your application, right? And this is basically preparing for scale, right? When you are starting or when you are deploying your application, you are not just deploying it for 100 users or 1,000 users, right? You have vision of, probably 100,000 users or 1,000,000 users or probably, 100 million users, right? And once you reach at that level, you need infrastructure to scale with you, right? And you have the auto scaling option there. You can, whenever the load increases, DOKS will automatically add new nodes to your cluster, right? Based on the requirement, based on the configuration you set. And and it's not just about scaling up again, right? We can scale down as well. So it's not like that, we will just keep adding the nodes up and, your bill will keep rising, right? So if the load comes down, those nodes would be removed as well, right? Kubernetes is a highly evolving project, right? There are a lot of features that keep moving from, alpha to beta to stable, right? I guess Kubernetes does 4 releases in a year, right? So there's a lot of features moving around, and you would want to make sure that you are always up to date, right? So that and your application basically supports at least all the latest versions, right? And your application is making use of all the latest features, right? So there is an auto version update option where you don't have to worry about updating your cluster every time a new release comes up. That can be done on the backend, right? And you can basically just start deploying your application with the latest features, right? And then you get metrics and insights. Of course, when you are running your application, you would want to monitor it. You would want to make sure that things are working as they are supposed to. There are no memory leaks or unusual CPU spikes, right? Things like that happening. So you get free insights into the cluster. And when you create a Kubernetes cluster, right, Kubernetes nowadays is an ecosystem, right? It's not just the cluster that you use. You also use some add-on services on top of that, right? Let's say you would want to run service mesh on top of that, right? You would want to use Linkerd, or you would want to set up a storage solution using OpenEBS, right? All those kind of things you can do with one click, right? So there is a marketplace available, and you don't need to basically install and configure all these services. You can just do one click and all these applications would be installed on the cluster and would be available for you to use, right? So that's about Kubernetes. Let's talk about another component that we will be using for our demo today, and that's GitLab. And GitLab is basically a DevOps lifecycle tool, right? Now, when I say DevOps lifecycle tool, I basically mean this is a tool that is going to help you over the whole DevOps cycle, right? So I'm not sure if you remember that famous diagram about DevOps, which has basically two cycles. One is a development cycle, one is an operation cycle, right? And GitLab as a tool can help you across everything, right? Be it your build, be it your testing, be it your deployment, release, monitoring, everywhere, right? It provides an automated way to deploy and do CI/CD pipelines, right? Now you might be thinking that, okay, there are other tools as well that can help me do that. There are a lot of other automation tools that can help in DevOps lifecycle, like something like Jenkins, right? The point where GitLab actually differs from that is GitLab gives you a very comprehensive experience, right? It's not just about creating an automation server. It can do a lot of project management activities, right? It can create reports for you. It can track issues for you. It can take care of merging stuff, right? And among other integration as well, right? And it's also configurable if you want some additional security or additional agility, right? You can tune multiple configurable parameters, and then you can basically configure it to your own use case, right? Now, how does it integrate with Kubernetes, right? How do we talk about it in the context of Kubernetes, right? So when we talk about GitLab with Kubernetes, there are two aspects to it. One of them is where you deploy GitLab itself on top of Kubernetes cluster as an application. So we won't be looking at that aspect for this particular webinar. We are looking at the other part where you can use GitLab to manage your Kubernetes cluster, right? So GitLab has a very deep integration with Kubernetes, where you can use it to manage Kubernetes cluster and deploy a workload, right? And it's not just about managing the cluster. You can also use GitLab to create Kubernetes clusters, right? I believe the integration at this point is with the Google's Kubernetes engine, and I guess Amazon Kubernetes service, right? But if you have any other type of Kubernetes cluster, maybe it's an on-prem or maybe it's a DigitalOcean Kubernetes, right? You can easily import them in GitLab, right? And Akash will walk you through in the demo on how you can basically do that, how you can import a DigitalOcean cluster into GitLab, right? And as we discussed, Kubernetes is a highly evolving project. So there are a lot of new versions coming up, and you would want to test your application on all of those versions, right? So you can basically add multiple Kubernetes cluster to one project of GitLab, and you can just make sure that you are testing it everywhere, so that your application is very tolerant of new features that are coming up, right? And there is one more interesting thing, that's something known as Auto DevOps, and Auto DevOps is basically kind of a PaaS platform, if you may, right? The idea is whenever there is a new feature coming up, or whenever there is a new code change comes up, right? GitLab will automatically detect that change, right? It can do a build, and it can test that build. It can even deploy that build on a Kubernetes cluster, right? And that deployment can be on a staging cluster. It could be on a production cluster. It can be anywhere else, and it can also monitor your applications, right? So if you think about it, that's a complete software lifecycle. The only thing that remains is the coding part, right? And it gives you a flexibility to do what you do best, right? Just solve the problem, right? Focus on creating the solution. Let GitLab and Kubernetes take care of everything else, right? Let's move on, right? So we talked about Kubernetes that basically creates an infrastructure layer for our application deployment and development. Then we talked about GitLab that can help automating the whole process, right? Automating the whole DevOps cycle, where you can just deploy any application on top of a Kubernetes cluster and test it, monitor it, and all those things, right? Now the third piece of that puzzle is the application itself, right? And for today's demo, we'll be talking about Drupal, right? Drupal is a content management system that basically allows you to organize, manage, and publish your content. Now, what I mean by that is, uh, in today's digital world, right, and specifically in the times that we are living in nowadays, right, digital connection is the primary medium to connect with your customers and with your peers and everybody, right? And how do you manage that much content, right? If you want to publish something to your website, if you want to publish something, if you want to get feedback via some forms, or if you want to manage social media, right? Drupal as a tool helps you do all of that, right? And from one simple single console, right? It's built on PHP based environment, and the power in Drupal again comes from its huge repository of modules, right? Last I checked, it had more than 16,000 modules, right? That you could have used. It's open source, there is no licensing cost, and it's also field tested, right? Drupal is used to power millions of applications and website across the globe, right? So it's not something that's new, right? There is a dedicated community that helps in development of Drupal, and you can use that to power your website or power your web applications as well, right? The only drawback with Drupal is that there is going to be a certain learning curve, right? It's not that high on being user friendly, but it also covers that up by being, not that technical, right? I mean, even if you are a non-technical person, you can easily use Drupal to create, awesome content on the web, right? Just to give you an overview of multiple Drupal components, right? There is a section of users, right? These are basically clients. These could be administrators or the clients or the web browsers that are interacting with Drupal. Then we have got administrators. They can basically control who can access Drupal and who cannot. And then you have got the Drupal core. This is where the core part of the system runs. And again, it's based on PHP. And then you have got a web servers, right? So again, I mean, if you want to interact with your audience, you're going to need a web server, and you get an option of you can use an Apache server or an IIS server or an Nginx server, right? Depending on what configuration or whatever you are comfortable with. And then you have the database that basically access the user data or the administration data or the content that you would want to publish, right? Again, this is by no means is an exhaustive diagram of how Drupal architecture looks like, but I just wanted to give you an overview of what all components are involved, right, in a Drupal architecture. Right. So that's all I had. And just to give you a recap, we talked about infrastructure layer, that's Kubernetes, that you can use to create and develop and deploy your application. Then we talked about GitLab that can help you do automation on top of that infrastructure layer, right? And then we talked about an application, that's Drupal, that can be deployed on top of Kubernetes, and whatever you can run test on it and you can monitor and all those things. Next, I'm going to hand over to Akash, and we will basically take all these components and do a pretty nice demo. Thank you.
Thanks, Piyush. Let me start with sharing my screen. All right. Thanks again for giving us a brief introduction about the components that we are going to use today. Hello, folks. I'm Akash. I'm Site Reliability Engineer at Accelerant. I just wanted to start off this demo by talking a little bit more about CI/CD, why it is needed, and why it is widely adopted in the software development processes. So CI/CD is CI is not. I mean, probably most of the people have you heard of CI/CD, right? Like CI is nothing but an acronym of continuous integration, where CD is continuous deployment and continuous delivery. So by adapting CI/CD in the software development lifecycle, we are going to achieve like less bugs get shipped to the production as regressions are captured early by the automated test. For example, we can add a stage or a step in our pipeline where we do the automated tests like integration tests, smoke tests, or any other kind of automation tests, like where we generate the reports based on those steps we run, and we can assess the reports, and based on the reports we can promote those branches to the master branch or the production environment that we use at live. So the complexity of deploying these applications has been taken away with this adapting to CI/CD. Your team doesn't have to spend days preparing for a single release, because when you have a proper setup of CI/CD, you don't have to worry about deploying it on the remote server that you are using. All you have to, all you or the developers has to worry about is they have to push their code to version control. From that point, a CI/CD pipeline will be taken care of all the things, like right from the building of the application, deploying it, running the test, and deploying it on production or whatever the environment you want to use. By adapting to the CI/CD, you can release more often. It accelerates the feedback loop with your customers by adapting this, because if you release more often, you get to know the feedbacks of your customers frequently, and these releases are very less risky and easier to fix in case of problems in case of any problems you face, because as you're not going to deploy it at a large chunk, instead of you will be deploying it at a smaller portions or a smaller batches. So this helps us going back or revert our changes pretty easily. And Kubernetes has a pretty good mechanism to roll back your steps. So this the whole pipeline and adopting Kubernetes will help and will minimize the deployment time and will minimize the release times that are there for you folks to deploy your applications. So, all right, let us go into deeper, like let us, as there are several components that Piyush had talked about, and let us see how we can utilize them and how we can connect them, and how we can connect them and deploy the applications to Kubernetes. So first thing, we are going to use a Helm chart for deploying an application. We are going to use a GitLab CI pipeline and a pre-configured ingress controller. Helm chart is nothing but it's a package manager for Kubernetes. It helps us to define, install, and upgrade even the most complex applications on Kubernetes. So, for example, Piyush has already mentioned about like monitoring and one-click applications that are available in DigitalOcean marketplace. So let us take an example of monitoring, like Prometheus or some other tool, where in case if you want to set up a monitoring tool at a on-premise cluster or a cluster that you have, if you don't have a Kubernetes cluster, so you have to install the monitoring solution from the packages which are available, and then configure that packages, and you have to test and everything. But in case of a Helm chart, there are already defined Helm charts which are available in GitHub. You can directly make use of those Helm charts and install on Kubernetes. So it's a pretty variabilized, and you can configure according to your needs. So that is the advantage of adopting to Helm charts. Piyush has already spoken about GitLab CI and how it is useful. And let us focus on pre-configured ingress controller. Kubernetes is a collection of controllers which controls all the different components. For example, replication controllers or replication controllers or stateful set controllers or any other controllers. So there will be an ingress controller which is available for to manage the ingress rules as well. Ingress is nothing but it exposes HTTP or HTTPS routes from outside of the cluster, to the services which are available in Kubernetes. So traffic is basically, it is controlled by the rules defining on the ingress we do. So let us take the example of Drupal application that we are going to deploy now. This application will have a service which is configured. There is an ingress rule which is associated with a URL. When you configure the application, a service will be configured first, and then an ingress rule will be configured. And there is an already pre-configured ingress controller which captures this rule and routes the traffic to the destination backend service that we have as a Drupal application. So it's just like ingress is nothing but it gives an external URL for the applications. Basically, it makes the applications accessible from outside the cluster. In case of in case of an ingress controller, or in case of any ingress controllers, basically it is responsible for fulfilling the ingress by configuring a load balancer. In case of DigitalOcean's Kubernetes cluster, all it does is it configures a load balancer in front of the Kubernetes cluster we have, and it routes the traffic from that load balancer. All right, let us dive into the demo now. Let me walk you through the CI file that I have for this demo. So basically, like I'm going to do a dummy commit here. I pushed my changes. As you can see here, a pipeline will be triggered. So this pipeline has two stages. One is build stage and another one is deploy stage. Build stage is nothing but it builds a Docker container with the source code we have in this repository. Basically, like this is the stage that we are using here now. It logins to the private Docker registry that we have, and it builds the Docker container with the source code we have in the repository using a Docker file, and pushes that built image to the Docker registry that we have mentioned in the second stage here. All right. As you can see, a container is being pulled now. Container is being built now. So let us go into the next stage, deploy stage. So there is a prerequisite that is required for us to use the deploy stage, because as Piyush has mentioned, we have to import a Kubernetes cluster in order to integrate GitLab with Kubernetes. I'm sorry, my apologies. There is a power cut here. I'm in the dark.
Okay. Hey, no worries. You're still visible a little bit, and yeah, this shows how well prepared we were, or you were.
All right. All right. So, so basically, as Piyush already mentioned, like you have to import a Kubernetes cluster and integrate that Kubernetes cluster with the GitLab CI in order for an application to deploy on the destination cluster. So you get an API URL for the cluster from the Kubernetes configuration you have, and there will be a secret associated with it, with the Kubernetes configuration. So you will get a CS certificate with the secret and a service token as well. So GitLab documentation is pretty vast, and you can find a pretty good documentation around importing an existing cluster and adding that existing cluster to GitLab. And also, like Axelent has a webinar which covered this topic previously. You can refer to that as well. All right, so let us go into the deploy stage, where once a already built image will be used to deploy the application on Kubernetes. So as you can see here in the deploy stage, we have two substages. One is before script and after script. Sorry, the second one is script. So before script is something which sets up the platform for script steps to run. As you can see here, it will create a namespace if the namespace is not already present. So as you probably you heard of Kubernetes namespaces before. Namespace is nothing but it creates an isolation between the two applications, and it has a pretty so it has different. You can have a resource isolation and as well as resource utilization, which is predefined for the namespaces. And there is a Docker login secret that will be created in order for Kubernetes to pull the private images from the private Docker registry. And let us, if we go into the deeper of next stage of substage of deploy stage, where basically we will be using a Helm client, and we will be installing the Helm chart, which is already present here, as you can see here. It has all the configurations. Basically, it is nothing but a YAML file, which has all the details about how your app is going to work. And once that is being deployed, once that is being run, this is how it looks. As you can see, our pipeline is succeeded. And let me walk you through what are the steps that I was mentioning. So here, the namespace is not already, that was not present. So it has created a new namespace and created a secret for us to pull images from the private Docker registry, and does a Helm in it and deploys the application. As you can see here that it has created an ingress. Our application will be accessible from on this URL. So as you can see, we have two parts running. One is MariaDB, which is the database, and the another one is demo pod. Let me open it. Let me open the URL. As this is a pretty normal Drupal installation, we don't have the already set up language and those details. So in case if you want to skip this step, if you have a database dump ready with you, you can restore the database with the dump you have. That is also possible using the Kubernetes jobs. And that is also possible with the Helm chart that we have. All you have to do is you have to update the job here, which will take care of restoring an application. Sorry, restoring the database dump to the database. So I'm going to use a standard installation. So it will take a couple of minutes of time to install all the modules that are required for us for the application to work. All right. So let us try to understand how this application is configured in Kubernetes. So as you can see, like in the introduction, Piyush has mentioned pod is nothing but a collection of containers. So as you can see here, there is two containers that we have used. One is PHP FPM container and an Nginx container. PHP container is something like a application, and Nginx works as a web server and which will be listening on port 8080. All right. So let us go into how Ingress is configured. As we spoke about a lot about Ingress. So as you can see here, there is an Ingress configured. There is this Ingress which has a host as K8s demo master and a URL. and the backend as K8s demo port 80. So you might be wondering, what is this K8s demo 80? This is the service that we were talking about. In Ingress control, as I already mentioned in my introduction, like Ingress will route the traffic from whenever a URL, whenever a request has come to, whenever a request has hit this URL, the Ingress controller will try to forward or route the traffic to backend. In our case, it is K8s demo 80. Sorry, K8s demo port 80. As you can see here, there is this service K8s demo, which has a port 80 and which in turn configured to route the traffic to Nginx. So this is the architecture of Kubernetes, and that we had installation is being done. Just the name and email addresses that we will be using. All right, this is how the site looks like, and our site is up and running. I can log out and I can log in back, and I can do whatever I want. And also you can, if you want, if you want to have access to the pod, or if you want to have the access to shell, you can directly exec into the shell and you can do whatever you want. As you can see, I have access to the shell now. It has all the details that are there, that are available in the source repository. I spoke about deploy stage, that I walk you through each and every step that I've used. All right, folks, that's it from my end. Over to you, Parth.
All right, thank you so much. I think accurate timing there as well. We were just about to go into the last 10 minutes of the webinar. So that leaves us with 10 minutes to answer all your questions that you've been pouring into the Q&A section. Thank you so much for putting those questions in. So we'll get straight to those questions. Are you able to see those questions as well, Akash and Piyush? You're on mute, Piyush.
Yeah, I don't see any questions.
Oh, okay. So then I'll read out to you. So the first question is for Akash. So it's from Rangaswamy, and he says, Akash, Nginx Ingress Controller is the official, official Nginx or the Kubernetes community-based Ingress, because there are two Nginx Ingress as of now in Kubernetes.
Thanks for asking this question, Rangaswamy. Basically, we are not using, in Axelant, we are not using any of the Nginx Ingress controllers. So instead of that, we are using Traefik, because it has the ability to serve the default TLS for all the domains. So our main intention was to have a multi-dev branches, and which has like, basically our use case was to serve wildcard certificates for all the domains that are available. So Traefik has a plugin for it. So we are using Traefik for that. In the demo as well, I've used Traefik, but you can use any of the Ingress controllers according to your needs and according to your use cases. I hope I answered the question.
Please give like a check mark or something as a reply in the chat if you got your answer. All right. And the next question is from Tahir. And the question is, what are the parameters used to autoscale in DO Kubernetes, and how can we give custom parameters for them? So that's the question for you, Piyush.
Yeah, right. So for DOKS auto scaling, we basically fall back on something known as HPA, that's horizontal pod autoscaler, that comes inbuilt with Kubernetes, right? So the idea is, I guess the parameter you use there is memory and CPU, right? I guess CPU is G8 and memory is still in support or something. But the idea is once you use HPA, you can horizontally scale your pods, right? So when you are running, let's say 2 replicas or 3 replicas and the loads start increasing, HPA automatically increases the number of replicas on your node. Right now, that's one component of it. Another component is something known as CA, that's cluster autoscaler, right? So HPA increases the number of pods. Now, as the number of pod increases, the load on the nodes also increases, right? And that's what cluster autoscaler watches. And based on the load on the node, wow, that almost rhymed. Based on that load, cluster autoscaler will automatically add another node to it, right? So that's the way that whole process works. And I guess you can use CPU metrics for that. And I guess you can use memory metrics as well. I'm not sure memory is in GA or not, but you can definitely use CPU matrices.
Thanks for that. And the questions aren't stopping at all. So I think there are a lot of questions and we may not have a lot of time. So please feel free to vote. I think people are already voting for the questions that they want answers to. So very quickly to the next one. So can you explain how the pods running Drupal are configured to use a single database? I think that's again a question for you, Piyush. Or is that Akash?
I think it's for me.
Yeah, Akash.
So I've used the settings file. Let me share that. Let me share my screen. I can walk you through that in a better way.
Okay.
So I've used it and I've configured so basically like the pod that I'm running will have an environment variables like MySQL DB and MySQL user and password, and gets those details from the environment variables. So as you can see here, the environment variables that you can use and you can export to the pod in this way. And I actually hard-coded here, but it's not a good practice. But you can get the values from the values YAML file, and you can configure
that. Did you get that answer, Tahir? And the two other folks who afforded it. Okay. So the next question is, how do you run Drush CIM and Drush CR? What is the best practice to run that? I think this is a very Drupal specific question, and I don't think, yeah.
So like I can share the practice like solution that I have, but maybe I'm not sure whether this is the best practice or not, but Drupal folks who are experienced in well-versed with Drupal, they can suggest like if it is not a best practice. But
yeah, on the chat,
the method that I use is basically there is a pod life cycle. You can use it and you can invoke a script. This also I can share it. So basically I'm using you can mention a script here, as you can see is postdeploy.sh, where you can add all the commands like Drush CR or Drush SIM. You can add those commands in the script, and you can invoke this script as a life cycle when pod is started.
All right, thank you so much. Also, we'll try and keep the answers also now very quick, because wow, there are still 7 more questions. And I think while people have voted for several others, there was one question that was asked in the beginning by Jamin, and I think he's asked the question very early in so we should answer that very quickly. Why should we use Kubernetes instead of load balancer? That's one question that has been asked.
Right, I guess this is in relation to high availability context. I mean, just correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe That's where Kubernetes and load balancers actually meet, right? And you don't have to use them. These are not mutually exclusive things, right? You can actually use load balancers with Kubernetes, right? The kind of capabilities Kubernetes provides, it's not just related to the services and the routing and just the deployment, right? Kubernetes actually provides you a whole cloud native experience where you can be resource efficient, you can be faster, you can be more flexible with all the things that you want to do, right? You can integrate your legacy systems and all those other things, right? So if those things appeal to you, then you should definitely use Kubernetes. But as I guess you would understand, it's not the only solution out in the market. If your only requirement is to create a high availability setup with the load balancer, Kubernetes is probably going to be a big overkill there, right? So it's better that you use a load balancer and use that to route request within your applications. But if any of the other qualities that you are looking for your teams or for your environments, please do use Kubernetes.
All right. I hope you got that answer, Jaimin. Then the next question right now is by Mahesh. And while this is a very short question, I think how to pass environment variables in Kubernetes.
I think I've already answered that question. Like I've showed through. I walked you through pod configuration, right? There is a field called env, and you can pass the variables in there.
Perfect. Also, we're like 1 minute over the meeting time. If in case people want to leave, you can raise your hands and feel free to leave. Right? I think you don't even need to raise hands. But if you're sticking around, thank you so much. I think we will go through some of these questions, right? If both of you are fine.
No, that sounds like a class thing, right? Raise your hands and leave.
I have no clue about these classes, but okay. Where people are, okay, you can, if you raise your hand, you can leave. Yeah. I won't hold a grudge against you. No, I won't. I don't know your name. I know your name and your roll number as well. No, just stupid things. Let's move on to the next question. For Drupal multi-site setup, what component do we need to consider from a Kubernetes standpoint? This is Deepak Mali.
I'm sorry, I'm not aware of Drupal multi-site, but I can get back to you with an answer.
So Deepak, we've taken a note of this question and we'll try and answer this through the next email that goes out to you. So the database is outside the cluster. That's what Rangaswamy asked as a follow-up question.
No, Rangaswamy, it is part of the cluster. It is running as a daemon. It is running as a stateful set, not a daemon set.
All right. The next question is from Sharik. Is it possible to have unequal number of MySQL and PHP pods, like 4 PHP and 8 MySQL, etc.?
Yes, you can. Basically, all you have to use is you have to configure an NFS or an Open EBS kind of setup in order to, because MySQL is a stateful application, right? So if you have in order to serve those applications, you need to have an NFS which takes this request and which in order to serve those requests, you need to have this kind of setup. You need to have an NFS setup, and once you have that, currently in this demo, single pod is running and single pod for database is running because we don't have the Open EBS or NFS setup available.
All right. Thank you so much. I hope you got that answer, Sharik. And okay, so I think that's one more suggestion from Rangaswamy, but we'll move on to the question from Kiran. In the demo shown, GitLab builds new containers for commit. Can we configure to reuse the same containers?
Yes, we can do that.
Okay, cool. The next question, okay, so Akash, access to access code, so project setup. Okay, so I think Rangaswamy, some of these things are, feel free to put them into chat and, he will be able to, take the conversation from there.
The next question is from Sami. Can we leverage pods for parallel testing?
I would need more details. What is like? How do you want to do it? Parallel testing means I did not.
Simultaneously multiple scenarios on the same application?
Yeah, it is possible. Yes, it is possible.
I hope that was a correct assumption, Sami. If not, just you can feel free to put that in the chat. So then a question from Devdatta Sarkar. What are the types of automation process we can implement with Kubernetes? Can you give us some examples? Ooh.
Right. I mean, that can be a webinar in itself, right?
Yeah.
So that, I mean,
do you want to do one?
Why not? That could be an idea for the next webinar, right?
Awesome. Done.
So no, the thing is, see, Kubernetes again works as an infrastructure layer. Like it gives you a platform where you can create and develop and test and run things, right? Now the automation part, that's where GitLab comes into the picture, and it doesn't have to be GitLab itself, right? It could be anything else, right? So Kubernetes in itself won't give you any automation capabilities. I mean, it will give you an API, right? And you can write scripts to use those APIs, and then again, it would become the automation server part, right? But the benefit you get with using, let's say, GitLab or Jenkins or something like that is using Kubernetes, you can do those things pretty faster, right? If you contrast it with the way people used to do earlier, right, where you have Linux nodes or Windows nodes, right? That's going to take a lot of time just to boot those things up, right? With containers or with Kubernetes, that whole process becomes much faster, right? And hence your automations become faster. You can catch your bugs faster. You can test out your features faster, right? And all these things become pretty, easy and human-less to do, so to say, right? So, just all in all. Use any automation tool that you are comfortable with. Keep the infrastructure layer as Kubernetes, and you should be good to go.
All right. Thank you so much. And now there are only 3 questions. I think we can go through them very, very quickly. One is from Cody Kura. Can we set up existing MySQL to Drupal cluster?
Yes. All we need is URL, database name, access details. If we have those, we can use any of the database clusters.
All right. Then another question from Sharik. Can we use MySQL replication with Kubernetes, or we don't need it in this case? The case that you were talking about earlier.
I'm assuming MySQL database, right? Yes. If it is that, then you can use that as well. So currently, like in this demo, I've used MariaDB. You can use like native MySQL engine as well.
Right. And on the replication part, you basically would want to, I'm assuming you're talking about, primary, secondary node kind of a structure. That again depends on what you are using as a backing volume, right? I mean, if you are backing it with a NFS or a cluster FS or things like that, or a Ceph kind of a solution, they should automatically take care of your replication part. If that's not, that's probably something you can implement on your front. But as Akash mentioned earlier, in the end of the day, the thing that you need, or the only thing that you need to connect to MySQL is your environment variables, right?
All right. Thank you so much for that. Also, praises coming in from the chat as well. Like people want to get in touch with Akash and emails and great webinar. Thank you so much for those things. One last question by Karthik, and I think then we are done. Is it best practice to run MySQL HA stateful on Kubernetes?
Yeah. So it's still this space is evolving, right? Like there are like a lot of operators around having their databases in a high availability mode in Kubernetes. Like recently we explored. I don't remember the name, but there are different operators which are available, which can solve the issues that are there currently around having databases in a high availability mode. We can share those tools that we have explored later in the email if you want. You can also try and explore if suits your use case.
No, yeah, I mean, Akash said it pretty nicely, but I would just comment say it. Storage is still an open problem with Kubernetes, right? There are a lot of companies that are trying to solve that. It's not just projects, right? I mean, you have got your Portworx, you have got Maya Data, and all those people, right? Until unless you are pretty sure what you are doing, because database is a very critical part of your application, right? I mean, that's the core of it, right? So until unless you are 100% sure what you are doing, keep the database separate, right? Let Kubernetes be stateless until unless you are 100% sure what you are doing about.
Exactly.
Right.
Thanks, Pesh.
All right. I think, we are done with all the questions, and thank you so much for sticking around. We still have like 30 odd people here from the 60, 70 people that we had. So thank you so much for sticking around. You will receive like a survey at the end of this webinar, and you will also receive an email. I've also put in the link to the $100 credit that DigitalOcean is giving away through this webinar in the chat, and it will also be there in your email. Yeah, you have something to say, Piyush. Go ahead.
No.
Oh, okay. All right. So yeah, if you have any further questions, feel free to reach out to us and these folks, and they've provided their contact details. You can reach out to them on social media. They'll be more than happy to get in touch. And we'll be doing more webinars in the next few weeks and months. So please stay tuned for that. And I think Sharik raised his hand. I think that was just for checking if the hand button works or not. It does, Sharik. It does. So yeah. Thank you so much for sticking around and coming to the webinar, and I hope you gain something out of it. See you soon in the next round.
Yep.
Ciao.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
I'll just stay on until people leave. It's like a good host situation, right? Everyone's leaving and they say thank you. And yeah, sure. Thanks to you too for joining.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.
All right.
Bye, bye. Thank you so much. Bye.
Yep.
Still 10 people there. Thank you to all those 10, 12 people sticking around. Ciao. Or are these 12 people who have just put on their computer and just left? No, right? I hope not. 11 now. Thanks. Thanks, Kuldeep. Hope you attend again. Rahul raised his hand. Are you messing with the button for some reason? All right. Sharayu still there. Test. Hi, Sharayu, test. Raised hand. She's there. She's definitely there. Nice. All right. Bye. Ending the cloud recording.